Today on Lightning Bugs.
I've been to hundreds and hundreds of plays with all three of my talented children and my wife. I was in one.
Oh, yeah?
I was in The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I was Father Christmas. I worked at it so hard. And at the end, I was Attorney General of the state at the time, so it made a little bit of news that I was in a play. And a reviewer did a review and said that I did a nice job, but it sounded like I was from the South Pole. Which, you sort of have to take it that way. And being community theater, I kept telling people I had to dye my hair white with this product that we had that came out very easily. And I kept telling them, we're running out. And one performance night, it was gone. So we had to send a runner to the Food Lion, and they bought white shoe polish. And so I had to make the call, are you going to be a real professional, a real actor, do the things that you need to do, put the white shoe polish all over my hair, went out and did my role as Father Christmas, and took a lot of showers to get that out.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. My guest today is the governor of my great home state, North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper. Governor Cooper is serving his second term as governor. He's a lifelong North Carolinian, born and raised in Nash County, where he attended public schools, as did I, and worked summers on the family farm. I didn't do that. He later earned undergraduate and law degrees from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Governor Cooper has been a strong supporter of the arts during his time in office, and the entire Cooper family are big fans of musical theater, performing, and creative expression. As he steers North Carolina through this pandemic, Governor Cooper has been committed to ensuring that the state's arts communities come back stronger than ever before. It's hugely important to me. So it's an honor to welcome the governor of the state that made me, Governor Roy Cooper. 1, 2, 3.
Ben, it's a privilege for me to be with you. North Carolina is so proud of you and your success and your contributions to music all over the world. So thanks for giving me a chance to be on with you for this.
Awesome. Well, this is a podcast about creativity, and the one thing that we haven't really hit on, and I guess it's not as sexy a subject, but it's very important, is how arts are paid for. The funding of arts, every aspect of funding. And I've thought to break it down, since you're of the farming persuasion, in a 3-part way of discussing this that maybe we can all kind of understand. And that is the education part, the arts and music education, prepping the soil, right? I mean, that's where we grow it to begin with. You're growing children, and they have to have some sort of education in the arts. Second is the funding of creative projects, what crops to grow. And then the third is the stewarding of investment in the arts and the economic returns, which are huge. So that's, once you've got your crop, how do you make that work for you economically? So that's a piano player's, songwriter's 3-verse way of breaking this down. So you're a lawyer. Why your interest in the arts?
Started when I was young. My mom always loved music. When I went to church, I would be in the church plays and be in the church choir, and music just speaks to the soul, I think. As I grew, I didn't think I had a whole lot of talent in it, but I loved watching and listening, and our love for theater was so much. I got tickets to the North Carolina Theater. I had them for like 28 years, season tickets, and I worked our way up every year to the front row. Musicals, theater, love the arts.
At what point in your life is this? This is when you're a student, or
it started young. When I was very young, I was more into sports. But but like, I cut a deal with my mom. She said, you don't have to practice so much if you'll take piano lessons. So I did take piano lessons and, kept my mom's piano for a long time. And my children are musically gifted and my wife, Kristen, is musically gifted. And so that interest has continued throughout our lives. When I drove the kids around in the back seat, they got to listen to show tunes and music all the time. And we would take them to theater from when they were very young. And it was just an integral part of our lives. Mostly theater, but some music, some symphony. All three of my daughters, Natalie, Claire, and Hillary, were involved in the arts when they were little, and Kristen as well. We were volunteers in the North Raleigh Arts and Creative Theater. And I've been to hundreds and hundreds of plays with all three of my talented children and my wife. I was in one.
Oh, yeah.
I was in The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I was Father Christmas. I worked at it so hard. And at the end, I was Attorney General of the state at the time. So it made a little bit of news that I was in a play. And a reviewer did a review and said that I did a nice job, but it sounded like I was from the South Pole. Which, you sort of have to take it that way. And being community theater, I kept telling people I had to dye my hair white with this product that we had that came out very easily. And I kept telling them, we're running out. And one performance night, it was gone. So we had to send a runner to the Food Lion, and they bought white shoe polish. And so I had to make the call, are you going to be a real professional, a real actor, do the things that you need to do, put the white shoe polish all over my hair, went out and did my role as Father Christmas, and took a lot of showers to get that out.
Did it?
But we've loved the theater as a family for so long, and really grateful to have had all of that time. I think all of my children blossomed there. And, you mentioned education. So many children today, they may not be good at math or science or any of the courses. If they have an opportunity to connect with the arts, which so many of our children on the margins and in communities that don't have the opportunities that I had growing up, they find that spark in the arts, and they find that they're good at something that they love, and it makes them better students in everything else.
Yeah.
It is so important for us to make those investments, plant those seeds. If you've got me in the farmer lane today, plant those seeds early on in life, and it's worth funding tax dollars for that kind of thing, because it's going to improve society. It's going to help our economy. So many things are connected in that way.
Well, I think, overall from the beginning of the farming to what that yields, it's probably not widely understood how little investment we do make, government investment that we're really allowed to make in our environment, and how very much it yields. So it is an investment. And you mentioned the word investment. I think it's important that it takes a little while to get someone around to that, but to understand how little we have to work with. Now, when it comes to kids, let's say, like for you, because you were more into sports. The data has shown that even across kids who are more interested in sports, a good, healthy arts education improves scores in other things. But at the time, you probably didn't really like having to be involved with music. I mean, it was a little bit like eat your spinach, yeah?
Yeah, piano lessons was like eating my spinach until I was able to play some things and then got more into it. And so arts education, so many children find a way, even if they never use it again in their lives, it opens up and gives confidence to a lot of young kids that otherwise may not have had it.
Yeah.
So in my administration, we've spent a lot of time working in the arts community. My wife, Kristen, the First Lady, for years on the North Carolina Arts Council. She actually was in a lot of plays and was very good. And she's made it a point to try to go to all 100 counties. And every county has an arts community. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's a central focus of a community. And you can build economic development around that. Mm-hmm. Tourism, everything else. Yeah. So we know how critical it is. And, you can spend money and you can invest it. And when you're talking about the arts, it is a real investment, because that yield is going to come tenfold of what happens with economic development, what happens with productivity of people, quality of life. We didn't touch on that. I mean,
I know it's
amazing.
It is. When it comes to figures, the data on the economic returns of that, a good place to go is the website for the Americans for the Arts. For my listeners, if you want, because I think the thing is I find, in this environment, we're either preaching to the choir or we're talking to some very, very skeptical people. So if I take the skeptical side of it, I would ask, okay, well, look, you took piano lessons. That wasn't from your school. That was private. So your family made a private investment in that. Why should we spend tax money to make that happen? So the government gets between me, my children in this way, and let me hear you speak some on that, because I know what my position is, but mine's long-winded.
No, it facilitates positive things. It facilitates. Government's not getting between; it's helping to facilitate relationships that can be very positive. And you do have people, and we probably have become more polarized than ever before politically. I remain a prisoner of hope. I believe in the innate good of people. I believe that we're going to be able to get through this time and come together as a state and as a country and find ways forward. And, oftentimes the arts and music can be one of those things that bring people together. You're always going to have people who don't believe the government should do much of anything other than invest in public safety and certain restrictions and minimized. But, we're past that. Government, obviously in North Carolina, education is our Constitution requires a sound basic education for our children. Right. And part of a sound basic education is introduction to the arts.
I think that's the best argument. Yes.
It is part of a well-rounded education. And most teachers can tell you how wayward students who just really couldn't find their way, connect with the arts, and then become better at everything else. That's probably some of your personal story.
Absolutely.
I remember you coming and visiting me here at the mansion and us talking a while. And by the way, my future son-in-law, he is your biggest fan. A few years ago when you and I got together, he said, are you really getting a chance to meet Ben Folds? And I said, yeah, I am. He said, will you get his autograph? And I said, yeah. So Zach Cook, here I am with Ben Folds. So Ben, you got to say, hey, Zach.
Sup, Zach?
He is a very talented artist himself. My daughter and he met in a production of The Producers. He sings, plays the trumpet, and all of that, and just loves everything you've done. So amazing. to be a good future father-in-law, I had to do that.
No, that was
I didn't mean to get you off track.
Well planted. No, that's I think that's great.
But I remember
and Zach does realize I'm talking to the governor.
Passionate you were talking to me that night in the mansion about how you felt government ought to step up and do what it needs to do to invest in the arts, and we got to do it.
Well, I mean, my personal experience, and I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I went to Moore Elementary School, and we had a thing called Big Group at the beginning of the day. We all sat on the floor and did a number of things that were prepping us for the day. And one of them was to do a clapping exercise where we read the rhythm of the music. And it was huge for me. And I honestly, at the time, I mean, I was just as I loved sports too. Like I loved soccer and other things. They didn't have to be for me as a kid. Like, is it sports or is it music? It was all just stuff that you learn. I didn't like math. So they made me learn math. I didn't like it, but I'm glad that I learned math. And I think a lot of the kids probably felt the same way as I did about math, about sitting on the floor and clapping in time. It was huge for me, but maybe not huge for everyone, but it was part of a balanced, and it cost nothing.
Right.
The teacher just went, ta, ti, ti, ta, ta, ti, ti, ta, ta. And suddenly everyone is doing the same thing in the class for a moment. We're on the same wavelength, and then we go off to do things. So those kind of experiences for me were huge. And when people start talking about it in these wild terms, all I can think of is what's so bad about putting emphasis on the arts and music and education when we're trying to grow citizens that are well balanced.
In fact, it's an imperative. Then, if
I believe so.
You want a well-rounded education, that's got to be a part of it. And unfortunately, when there are cutbacks in education, that's often the first place they go.
Right.
Is going to the arts and music. And that is a shame because that's part of a sound basic education, something that we need to do.
What do you find is the reasoning behind that? Like behind the curtain where you're seeing things in a government place? Because all of the left and right, when I talk to congressmen about funding the arts, I don't find any of them, even with the most extreme positions on the opposite of mine, that don't love music, that don't love art, whose kids don't love music and art. And yet usually what they say is they kick the can down to someone else. They go, well, look, we love it, but that needs to be paid for by the state or the city, or that needs to be paid for by philanthropists.
Well, I think you've hit on something, is that the arts can bring us together, even the extreme political spectrum. It's something that can bring us together. And I think you're seeing more and more, particularly here in North Carolina, more and more on both sides of the aisle who understand the importance of investments in the arts. My wife and I went to the International Bluegrass Festival in Raleigh, and we got to introduce one of our favorite bands, Steep Canyon Rangers, just like you performed at the inauguration. Thank you very much for doing that. But one of the things that my wife Kristen told the crowd was, my mom and I don't agree on much, but we do both love the Steep Canyon Rangers. And I think the arts and music can be a bridge for us. And I think you're seeing an increasing awareness of the importance of funding the arts. Here we do have the North Carolina Arts Council, and we're not talking about just funding the big things in the arts. We've got the symphony and the ballet, and all of that is fantastic. And the North Carolina Opera, those are special things. But maybe even more important is this grassroots funding that goes out to all counties in North Carolina through the Arts Council, and go to the Whirligig Park in Wilson, North Carolina. It's become a national tourist attraction, just a work of art down there. The community theaters across our state, and mentioning the arts, it's people have gotten hit hard by this pandemic, but our artists have gotten hit hard. And, we need to do a lot to help them. Thank you for participating in our charity benefit Under One Roof for the arts here in North Carolina. We raised about $50,000 for, we talk about starving artists. Well, that really has happened during the pandemic, because even the best of them with no live performances, it's just been a really tough time on all of us.
I know professional musicians who I've come across and touring over the last 25, 30 years, played with huge names, just accustomed to see them whether it's an award show somewhere or a stage or a coliseum, who are now and have been playing porch gigs. They go to someone's house and they play on the porch.
Yep.
I think that shows two things. One, it shows incredible generosity on the part of the artistic type and spirit that an industry hit that hard. They're still out there making people happy. And I think that I'm proud of my homies for doing that. And also just shows what they're having to do to make a dime. I mean, that's a steep fall.
Well, all three of my daughters are talented, as I mentioned, but my youngest daughter, Claire, wanted to take it professionally, and she's an opera singer, graduated from the Peabody Conservatory at Johns Hopkins, and was looking forward to a career in opera. And as she graduated last year, there was no opera.
There's no opera.
She tried to do some things virtually, but it's been tough on all of them. But you're right. The spirit is still coming through with these artists. We've been excited here in North Carolina to have just an overall project we call Come Here and See, HEAR, where we're highlighting artists all over our state. Kristen hosted Music in the Mansion, where we had wonderful array of musicians come and play here. So we're going to keep working on this, Ben. And I think government can get more responsive because you've got a great message here and how it helps all of us, and particularly how it helps our children. And our senior population has had to deal with a lot with this pandemic, and art and music does so much for their quality of life.
Yeah. All right, we're going to hear from the Peanut Gallery. Want to hear comments or questions that we can talk about. Let it roll.
Hey, Ben, my name is Trevor, and I host a podcast called Album Divers with my co-host Shane. And every month we take turns picking an album that's either been around a while or one that's new this calendar year. And on the eve of the 20th anniversary of Rock in the Suburbs, we are picking that album for our September pick. And I'm just wondering, reflecting on this album 20 years later, what stands out the most to you as the person that created it?
Oh, interesting. As the person that created it. Well, first, that sounds like a lot of fun, what you're doing. I love diving into albums and thinking about, the thing about an album as a collection is that it really marks a time period. Like the sound of the album, the themes, it's going to strike. Even if I listen to an album, it's like, let's say I discover a Nat King Cole album now. I'll reflect on this time based on that album I associated with it. But for the maker of the album, I think it brings us back to the era and the sight, smells, sounds of that era. And for me, it's real distinct. I was in Australia for most of it. And in the second half, I was in Los Angeles. And, I'll just tell you just personally some of the things that were going on. My kids were twins. They were a year old. And I was, I was suffering a really embarrassing, debilitating, medical issue, which I'd have surgery for later. And so I was spending the first half of my day in so much pain that I would just try to keep myself from moaning laying in the bed. It's funny when you don't want to moan because you think it's undignified, but it just comes out anyway. I was in a lot of pain. And when that pain would subside, I would go into the studio. I spent a lot of time writing the album. The experience, most of it was recorded in a church in Adelaide. And that church wasn't necessarily made for recording, though there was a recording studio next to it. So it's kind of hard to explain, but I brought down a producer from the US. I'm just kind of rambling on about this. And it was very solitary. It was just me and my producer, Ben Gross. So I would go in and I play the drums, I play the bass, and then I play the piano with it. I play the piano first, then I play the others. I mean, the song Luckiest, that was recorded, the piano of that many times because there was a cricket in the church that kept making sound. And all the takes start with me slamming a door so that the cricket would shut up. And I would try to get through the whole take before the cricket started again. And I don't recall if we ended up editing takes in order to keep the cricket out or not, but I think we tried to use a whole take because that's what I wanted to do. That's something I remember. So yeah, I remember it was hot as hell. I was in a whole lot of pain. When I wasn't in pain anymore, I was in a church with one guy running around to all the various instruments. And when I got to America, to finish finish vocals and mix the thing, my producer and I both got a pretty terrible, year strain of influenza, which put us down both for about 2 or 3 weeks, probably a month between the both of us. And then we finished the record. So that's what I remember. It was a very distinct era of time, that these are the things I remember. I wish I could remember more about it, but I remember I didn't like it much at the time. I felt it difficult to promote a record that I wasn't as proud of at the time. And as time has passed, I've become a lot fonder of the album, and particularly happy that I spent as much time as I did writing ahead of time. A lot of times I write more in the studio. This one I was writing super hard before. Thanks for your question. I hope that's what you asked. And that's the thing. It's unimpeachable, I think, is the importance to human beings of music and art. I mean, it's just part of who we are. And like you say, it's a way to find a bridge to some pretty extreme divides right now. And to be fair for anyone watching this, my experience with Republicans in Congress has been really positive when it comes to art. Most of them agree a lot more with me than you would think about funding it and the importance of arts. And it is, they've got kids and they want to learn too, but then they have to figure out how they're going to budget this stuff. And my argument ends up being, look, if it's hugely important to humanity and to civilization and to our well-being and to the economy, hugely important to have this. And yet we are making it such a small, tiny, minuscule percentage of what we invest in. What does that even symbolically say? If your government isn't willing to spend anything on something that is everything, and I would give an example of you're wanting to incentivize or to push the film industry in North Carolina. Now, that's going to and has brought in a lot of money. Like the arts are big money. So it makes sense. Could you tell us a little bit about your plan there and really, even historically with Dino De Laurentiis being in Wilmington, I think years ago, like kind of get the rest of us up to date on where you are on that.
Yeah, we were really an epicenter of the film industry in North Carolina for years, starting with Dino De Laurentiis and Wilmington, but really all over the state. Then two things happened. One was the legislature decided that they were going to dial back these incentives, the investment that you've been talking about in the industry. I think there was some talk about not wanting to subsidize Hollywood elites, things like that.
Right.
And then the horrible discriminatory House Bill 2 passed. And then we had the boycott, essentially, of the state by a lot of people. And so the film industry didn't totally dry up, but it really hit a very low point where you had families who loved North Carolina, wanted to be here, but were commuting to Atlanta because Georgia had upped their film incentives, and we were really losing this business. When I got in, I said, we got to fix this. Yeah. So number one, I worked hard, and now we have the House Bill 2 completely off the books.
Mm-hmm.
I met with CEOs. I went to California, went all kinds of places, met with CEOs of film companies and said, guys, North Carolina is the place to be. We are inviting. We value diversity. We want you to be here. Then we were able to do a little better on the incentive side. And this year, even in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to hit a record in film production in North Carolina. And it's because that we marketed ourselves as an inviting place, number one. Number two, we have the workforce infrastructure of people who know what they're doing. So when you come here to do a production, you've got a great workforce. And number three, we've got more competitive incentives. And when you look at the spinoff from this, all of the small businesses that are supported, so many small businesses that are involved in film production, it's going to be a great thing for North Carolina. We just have to keep it going. I revitalized our North Carolina Film Council to help us recruit.
Right. And so help you recruit what?
Television shows.
Okay, got you.
Movies. Looking for directors and producers and others and companies.
Persuade that talent.
Disney to Netflix. It's like, why are you filming the Outer Banks in South Carolina? So those kinds of things. No,
but I think that's a great example, man. Because basically, to a punter like me, what you're saying is you're just persuading business to come bless North Carolina with the business, the same as you would if it was a car plant, or if it was Amazon or anyone like that you might want to bring and woo the hub to bring in. So this is treating the arts just as the powerful industry that it actually is, and respect.
That's right. That's right. And it also helps to put us on the map globally. People want to come see where X movie was filmed, and it helps tourism, and it just opens us up economically.
Do you have any idea off the top of your head, just in ballpark, how much you would have to invest in wooing this industry, and how much North Carolina would benefit from it?
Well, it's a multiplier, and I don't have the exact
I just know
numbers in front of me, but it's tens of millions of dollars that we do invest in the incentives.
Right.
And let's start off with economic incentives. Nobody really likes them.
Right.
But it's a fact of life of being in competition with other states and other countries, really, when you're talking about film.
Yeah.
That you have to have some, and we put that baseline of incentives to make sure that we have that to attract, and then you've got all of the other workforce, diversity, quality of life, all of those things that they are looking for and wanting to film here. So it's going to have a significant economic impact on our state, and we do have economists who do the analysis. Of what a particular investment of an economic incentive does, and what does that do to the multiplier of supply chain and small businesses and all of the things that are going to benefit from film production in our state.
Well, that just goes to the reality, which is again kind of like sports and music. We're not talking about competition between the government and the private sector. What we're talking about is teaming up. If I'm in the private sector and say I'm in the catering business, I'm thrilled about what you're doing. Can you imagine how much catering business I'm going to get if I'm in a small town and they come to make a major movie in that town? I'm going to have a really, really great year.
The hardware store where they're building the sets. It just goes on and on and on of spinoff economic benefit from that. Yeah. And that can be true in a lot of areas of the arts, not just
absolutely
film production.
Yeah, so, I see it as a touring musician over a quarter of a century now touring. I've seen places, so many I can't even count, where I was playing in a pretty depressed part of town, and there would be the revitalization of a local theater. And a lot of times, more than not, the NEA has been involved in that. And then local, their thing is, let's target a place and put X amount of money in. But in order to put that money in, they require 7 times the investment locally, privately. So for every $1 of money that the federal government can put in, they are wooing another $7 of private investment. And 3 or 4 years later, I come through that same part of town, and suddenly there's a cafe next to it. And then there's a parking lot where they're charging people to park. And then there's another little store. And pretty soon that part of town has really come up a lot. And I think that everyone knows that section has been revitalized. Maybe they don't understand how important it was that it was based around an arts venue. And they might not understand that there was a collaboration between the government and private industry entities that made that happen.
And particularly as we emerge from this pandemic, because I think, we've learned a lot doing, for example, we've learned that we don't need as many in-person meetings. We've been flung probably 10 years into the future with telemedicine and remote learning. But I think we all know how much we've missed the arts, how much we've missed live performances, and how much we've missed being with each other when art is happening, so to speak. And so hopefully there will be a renewed effort as we emerge from this in the arts arena. I certainly want to help to facilitate that. And voices like yours, Ben, can make a real difference, because there are so many leaders in government and politics who think you're the boss man and idolize you in various ways. And your voice can be very important in all of this, as are many other artists' voices. And, your voice speaks mostly for those communities and those children, and not necessarily the bigger performances like yours, although it would benefit. But you're helping rural North Carolina, who often gets the short end of the stick.
Absolutely.
The art, a small spark from the arts can make a real difference. Just go to Kinston, North Carolina, and you can see what the arts has done to grow that city in the middle of Eastern North Carolina to even have a sushi bar now. Right. So things like that can matter an awful lot.
Well, I think everyone in the private sector, which is everyone, makes it does our business there. All understand like the concept of the creative, cultural creatives. Where you have a section of town where the weirdos have taken over for a while, and they make it look nice, and suddenly it's hip and cool, and then it's time to start investing money in there, and people come in. I think it's often misunderstood the nature of the collaboration, which is a musician. It's another thing we learn in music is collaborating. I'm not if I'm not a flutist, I need a flutist to play that part, and they think about music differently than I do. I like that everyone thinks differently and brings in stuff, and like when you're in school, you're forced to be with other kids who that's not who you would choose to be with. So playing sports with them, awesome. Playing music with them, awesome. It's just too bad that the poorer the schools and the poorer the neighborhoods, the less chance they get at their public school to have music. And it's inexcusable, and everyone knows how good it is for you. So would I like to chip in a half a penny or whatever it is on my taxes to make sure that people can get an education and not as nice a section as I grew up in? Hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why public education and investment in it is so critical, and why I've been pushing so hard to make significantly more investment in our public school. I think North Carolina has benefited for years from leaders decades before us who knew the value of education. We're the state that has the first state university in the country to open its doors. We have an amazing community college system with 58 community colleges. Most everybody lives a half hour at least away from a community college. And we've known the importance of early childhood education. And I think we've been, over the last few years, resting on our laurels, and we have cut back on that investment, which is a mistake, because we need to attract educators to the profession, and they need to be diverse educators. Diversity is our strength. You mentioned all different kinds of people collaborating. The private sector has found that their bottom line improves when they are more diverse, because they get different ideas and different input and different perspective from different kinds of people. And so we are focusing on recruiting diversity here in our state and realizing that strong investment in education across the board, pays off manyfold in the future. And with the CEOs that I talk to and recruit to North Carolina, they aren't interested in a corporate tax break. They're interested in three things: workforce, workforce, workforce. I mean, they want educated people. They want people with credentials and degrees. And why don't we make those children the best they can be? And an arts education is a crucial part of shaping students and helping them as they grow up, giving them confidence in themselves, and also giving them something that improves their quality of life down the road. It seems simple, but you're right. It's not.
Well, a lot of mayors are always going to be more for politicians. They're going to always be more pro arts, because they see immediately in their towns that if they're trying to bring in a business, that the families of the CEOs want to know they're moving to a town that has a symphony and ballet. Oddly, they don't always go to it, but they want to know that they live in a place that is a dignified, civilized place. And that's why when you land in an airport, I go through all of them, one of the first ads you see is for the local symphony or the local ballet. They're not saying come to the ballet. What they're saying is we're civilized. Come in. We're good, smart people. And so I know that most mayors I talk to are really pro that, because when you're bringing in people and they're interested in workforce, they also want to know that their family isn't moving to a stupid place.
No, absolutely right. And they are interested in where their children go to school if they're going to move here. And they are going to want to move to a place that believes and values culture and the arts. And I've often talked about, when we talked about the symphony and the ballet and the theater, that this is a strong economic development recruiting tool, but also the community theaters. I mean, there's so many people who love that. I mean, we have Raleigh Little Theater here. My wife Kristen's been on the board, volunteers over there. It brings people together like nothing else. And
I agree.
We have so much to be thankful for. We want to get that all across the state and make sure every community has an opportunity for that kind of rich experience, because it's good just because it's good to have, but it is also good as an economic development recruiting tool.
There's something you brought up made me think, this is probably more of a question for your wife, really, because she was she did a couple terms as the head of the North Carolina Arts Council. That's correct.
Well, she was on the Arts Council, yes, but now as First Lady, she is making arts one of her strong initiatives that she's doing.
I know there are it's natural to have a concern if you're going to, at this level, and we're not talking about education anymore. Now we're talking about which crops to grow. If you're investing and you're the government and you're investing in specific projects, whether it's a theater or an art museum or whatever it might be, people get concerned about how we make those choices.
Right.
And this, I think, comes to people's fears about the government getting in between something. Could you speak to how a government makes the choices and who makes those?
It's one of the hardest parts of this because those who can least afford it and the ones who have the less art and could use more don't really have the experience on how to get it. Having good grant writers can be one of the most powerful tools that a community can have.
Interesting.
It's why
speak more to that. Like what does that actually mean in the real world? Grant writers. Tell me about that.
Well, so the North Carolina Arts Council, I think, is the best place to fund because they make decisions, and these are people appointed from all over the state.
Okay.
There's an application process, and they have a certain amount of money to divvy out. And what they do is look for these places that need help,
right,
that have really good ideas on things that can really grow. The Arts Council looks at all of those applications from these communities, concentrates on making sure that there is diversity in the investments, looking at the communities and the work that they're already doing.
Yeah.
And you do have line items in the budget for the symphony and the ballet and all that kinds of things.
Okay.
But this Arts Council thing is what really gets it into the community outside of the schoolhouse. We still have art teachers and music teachers and band teachers and all of that in our schools that we need to push.
Yeah.
But the Arts Council reaches into communities,
right,
where the artists are where they live, and those decisions are difficult to make, but it's so important for them to spend the time to do it. And that's what this volunteer Arts Council does, is help make those funding decisions.
Right. So the actual members of the council, they aren't government. I mean, they're just like, maybe one of them's a teacher, one of them could be a farmer. They're people who come down and they're volunteering their time, I assume.
And most all of them are people who love the arts. And I make appointments to the Art Council as governor.
Okay.
And I try to get people from different sectors, musicians, people who do pottery, people who paint, people who like theater, all come together in recognizing what the arts can do for a community. I wish the funding could be significantly increased because they make some amazing investments, and a little bit of money in a community, as you say, matched by individual contributions, local government contributions, private nonprofit contributions, private businesses who see the importance of arts in the community that can potentially help their business. All of that can come together.
Does the Arts Council get regular funding from the National Endowment for the Arts? Is that part of their?
I don't think so. It is.
They can apply, I assume.
It is money appropriated by the North Carolina General Assembly, and then it is their job to make the recommendations on how to distribute.
Well, I think that goes back to the beginning and to bookend it, which is it starts with education.
It does.
And I want to thank you for everything you're doing to make sure that that kids growing up in North Carolina get a balanced education like I did way back in the 1860s.
Yeah.
And
come on, Ben. I'm older than you, man. Don't do age jokes now.
Yeah, but in the 70s, I got a whole nice helping of balance. I went to the North Carolina School of the Arts to play in the orchestra when I was youth orchestra when I was 9 years old. I went to Governor's School, North Carolina Governor's School. We had the Renolda House down the street that I could walk to and see things. I had so much access, great education, and I just want to thank you for making sure that part of the chain moving forward, that our grandkids can say that they got a better education than we did, because they're going to need it.
Well, Ben, public education is the key. And I am so grateful for the public education that I got, the public education that my children got. I go into a lot of schools, have not been into as many during the pandemic, but still go into a lot of schools. And I remember my teachers, Miss Pridgeon, first grade, Miss Brantley, second grade, Miss Batcher, third grade, Miss Colley, fourth grade, Miss Taylor, fifth grade. I can go through all of my teachers, and I make it a point to go to these public school teachers and tell them how grateful I am that they've dedicated themselves, and they have no idea how many lives they've affected.
That's right.
My mom was a public school teacher. She was fantastic. To this day, I will have people come up to me. I'll be in Charlotte. I don't know where it is. They'll come up to me and say, I want to pay you a compliment. I'll think they're talking about me, and they'll say, your mom was the best teacher I ever had.
It's big.
And, you know, it matters. And I know, Ben, that you can point to teachers who made a difference in your life and got you on the right track. So
yeah, I dedicated
we got to keep those investments.
Yeah, I dedicated a whole chapter of my autobiography to my public school teachers who made a big difference. And I had to cut that down. It was going to be a really long chapter. But all right, well, I know you've got a state to run.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'd love to stay.
I like to give people a creative exercise. And while you're not an artist per se, could you come up with something, if I put you on the spot, that would be a creative exercise for people to do that would help them in anything from creating art to maybe ideas in business or ideas in life?
So one of the things that I have started doing, and it really started with the pandemic, every night before I go to bed, I usually say prayers too, but I think of 5 really good things that happened to me that day. And it could be anything from seeing a beautiful bird on a tree branch to making progress on some bill that I was interested in that helped. And, you know, after you do those 5 things, oftentimes it's 6, 7, 8.
Right.
It gets you on the track. That's helped me a lot. It's helped on my positive outlook of things, because I've had some rough days. All of us have had some rough days, particularly during this pandemic. And when you sit there and force yourself, and I know this is probably a regular psychological thing that people do. I don't know. But for me, you know, I made it personal, and it just sitting there and, you know, I can feel myself beginning to smile because of good things that happened, even on a day that you would probably say at the end of the day, God, that was a tough day.
Yeah.
But forcing yourself to do that, I would say that would be something that I would advise.
You know, you would think that exercise had already been taken, but no, it hasn't. That's the first one. So if I hear you right, you're saying write down or at least take mental note at the end of the day of 5 great things, no matter how big or small, that happened in that day.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be great. I mean, a good thing, a thing that made you feel good, or a thing that you considered to be positive. Because
I think that's a great exercise.
They're there. So,
thank you. Well, thanks for taking time with me. It's really, really great to see you.
All right. See you soon, I hope.
All right. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. Thank you so much for watching Lightning Bugs on YouTube. Check out more episodes and subscribe if you have not already. You can also listen to Lightning Bugs wherever podcasts may be found.